வினை தொடர்பறுத்து பரமுக்தி அருளும் அனைத்துலகின் நட்ட நடு உற்றிடு விளக்கண நிலை தொழி கொடுக்கும் உருவம் விசித்திர மிகுத்த பல அற்புதம் நிகழ்த்துகிற சித்தர்கணம் நித்தம் உலவும் அசைத்துயிர் உலுக்கிடு நசை சருகெரித்திடு.
Hello YouTube. In this before I go on with this episode, first of all I need to go back to the Bhimbetka cave art. I briefly mentioned it in the beginning of the part called Sarasvati's Fasti, and in that episode I claimed not to have found substantial evidence of the prevalence of swastikas among the many glyphs in the many caves of that area. I recently came upon a short PDF here, of which I think it may be interesting since it is written by someone who has actually visited the place. In the document they attempt to date the paintings, putting them into 4 different periods, and the symbol is mentioned in company of depictions of deities and is dated back to the 3rd period, defined as going from the 1st century AD going back until 3000 BC. In other words, the claim of the caves having the oldest swastika in the world is simply not true, and nevertheless my claim was not true neither, so I hope I cleared that out. Looking into ancient India, the Theosophical Society will pop up very soon. When you're looking into swastika related material, it is prominent in their own symbolism. I'm more or less trying to stick to a timeline in this series, but I have to address this because of their influence in the history and education of both Europe and to this day in the Indian society as a whole. To this day, a lot of the educational material used in India is often still based on colonial ideas. Looking in what happened back in Europe and in the US, I think it is safe to say that the mindset of the ruling elites towards indigenous people and cultures were nothing less than a supremacist one, with all consequences what the engineering of social structures is concerned. I have to take care not to lose myself in that racial and eugenic backgrounds here, and I will stick to the subject and current time period, being the end of the 3rd millennium and 2nd millennium BC. In my opinion, the theosophists take the Vedic metaphors quite literally, like other religious sects tend to do with ancient philosophies. I linked a text of one of the heroines of the theosophist, Annie Besant, under the video, which goes deeper into the theosophist idea of race development, showing an example of how Vedic literature is used to underbuild their ideas. I must add that Blavatsky herself spoke against any form of racism in her work, The Secret Doctrine. So more on theosophism in another episode. Eugene Burnouf, one whose works many have based their theories on, does lean towards a supremacist ideology, however, and it is taken for a fact that Blavatsky as well regarded him as an expert on the field of Indology. Max Muller is another one, a highly praised scholar with questionable morale, and in my opinion, clearly his Christian beliefs made him recuperate a legacy which wasn't his to claim. The Aryan hypothesis they put forward fitted conveniently in the zeitgeist, and it would be used in the centuries that followed for political means. It can be molded into any ideology, how any reclaimist sees fit, and it is like that still today. I am not going to discuss this really. The reason why I bring up the Theosophists and Burnoff is because they do give us information on the connection of the swastika with the Hindu pantheon. There are no specifications to be found, which explains a connotation between the swastika and any of the multitude of deities in the Indian region. Although there is little to be found that seems substantial, it is my conviction that the stories on Agni, the oldest of gods, gives us the best clues. And it is from Burnoff that we learn that the sacred fire ritual in which the Arani, the holy stick used to make fire, supposedly on wooden sticks, put down like a swastika, like in the following text is explained. It is not his, but it is based on what he has to say about the swastika in that sense. They also give us a little explanation about Agni, and I hope to make clear later on why I think this deity is of importance. I have added another few short excerpts on the video in which the Brahmani sect is performing the ritual. In Hindu tradition, the recital of texts is meticulously performed in a strict manner, and every sound, sigh, or pause converts more knowledge to the initiate than is mostly understood by the outsiders. The earliest written verses of the Rig Veda date back to the 2nd millennium BC.
The Vedic enclosure is always a temporary structure, unlike the later temples of Hinduism. Large altars were made of bricks. The dimensions of squares, rectangles, and triangles are also functions of the size of the sacrificer. The art of firing bricks can be traced to the Indus Valley civilization, which is earlier than the Vedas. Around the 10th century BC, the Yajurveda speaks of altars of fire built from 1,000 bricks. The altar construction in the shape of a bird is called Agnichayana, the piling up of
just making a pause here. This is a Arani and the block on which they make fire. The next fragment will be showing how they actually do it.
The Hota priest of the Rig Veda addresses the new fire. He is variously identified as the sun, Agni, and the creator god Prajapati. Prajapati created the world through his own dismemberment. His pieces became parts of the universe. In the construction of the altar, Agni Prajapati is reborn, and so is the sacrificer himself. Beginning on the 4th day of the ritual, one layer is consecrated each day.
So Burnoff gave us a description of how the sacred fire used to be lit, and he mentions the swastika as a wooden tool in which the tinder is lit by rubbing the wooden stick. As we saw at the end of... I'm gonna interrupt myself here because since I made this video earlier, I found a few things I want to add. Like the Pramantha also referred to as Uttar Arani, and Uttar means the upper, above, and Arani is the wooden cross, like where they rub the Paramantha in. So the Pramantha is the rod used to kindle the fire by friction. I don't think I have to point out to most of you how the word Pramantha and its meaning reminds to Prometheus, the mythological figure, the titan who stole the fire of the gods to bring it to the humans. Both in material and metaphorical sense, he is the bringer of enlightenment. This relates directly to the Indian deity Agni, but let's look at Prometheus a bit more first. He is called the light bringer. He represents, according to some, the individualism in society that brings forth innovation in the arts or the development in craft and industry, the manifestation of moral or law. The interrelation of individual and collective sets in motion a wheel of rise and fall. Poimander or Pimander of Trismegistus or Phoronius are mere variations from Egypt and archaic Greece on the same theme. So they also personify the mind of God. They are the birds that delivers the divine thunderbolt. Talking about birds, according to a researcher named Bailey, there is a significant etymological link between the words for and fire. The root is fou, and like in French that's feu, we know fuego, feuer from German, fever, fire from English, vuur from Dutch, and in my own language, Flemish, vier means both a number and it also means fire. It's written in the same or expressed in the same way. It also it's also present in the name of the bird phoenix. So the name is a joining together of the root fo and x, and it points to the great fire. And I thought that was a rather interesting connection as well. Because again, we find the symbol expressing its cyclical event of birth and rebirth, and that of a steady and secure but merciless renewing movement. We cannot go around the immense impact that control over fire had in the life of ancient man. Prometheus and the other messenger fire-bringer deities we find in so many cultures of antiquity express an ancient story of creation of man. Fire is thus indeed a creative force. Even when it is through the act of destruction, it will always provide life to the seeds that grow in the ashes, or in this case, the egg of the bird needs fire to crack open and set the new phoenix free. There are so many deities expressing the essence of fire. They are all different manifestations with their personal avatars, but they express an intermediate between the profane and the mundane, between the omnipotent force behind the scenes and within humanity. For the ancient Arya, those who lived according to the Veda then, Agni was that omnipotent force, because he was omnipotent, he was omnipresent, Prajapati generates himself as Agni through, manifests Agni out of his third eye, and as a manifest, as the light in all creation, he did not just bring fire into the shape of a bird, he was fire. And all that comes from it was just the same Agni, manifesting into another one of his many avatars. Over time, Lord Agni lost his central divinity, and his image dissipated into a multitude of avatars. He is seemingly reduced to an omnipresent god, from an omnipresent god to a minor one, still connected to the swastika as one of the guardians of the 8 heavenly quarters. It seems to me as if this evolution gives away how divinity largely externalized, as if the boundless fire that is Agni, the central fire of the Pythagoreans, that which burned in Hestia's hearth, became trapped and limited within anthropomorph personification. The animistic spiritual religious experience disappeared, as we make king gods in the image of god kings instead. I am going to close this chapter. I am not going to come back on the theosophical cult neither, because what I have been reading about them really leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. When I first looked into this, I didn't know what to expect, since my vision and consideration was as European as can get. I was aware of controversy when I considered the content of this episode, like the Aryan invasion theory emerging around the time when the Brits took over and they were looking for means to impose Judeo-Christian doctrine, just like they had done in Africa. The Indians were to forget a rich cultural past, and they had to learn one language, English only. Sanskrit was declared dead in an attempt to make the people forget about their old ways. But that turned out otherwise, because Hindus are very conservative in their religious practice, allowing rite and religious customs to survive much longer. Still to this day, the academic world bases its conclusions on translations that are made with a Western mindset. We look at the history of India and its influence on the Eurasian continent with the perception of foreigners and claim to be experts. Nowadays, the 19th century white supremacist perspective may be gone, or seemingly gone, but apparently it is still subtly lingering in the school books of India. As for us Westerners, we generally know nothing or very little about the history of India, and we know even less of the achievements of the southern Indian people. Still, we claim the right on a source of wisdom like the Vedas through an invisible bloodline, even by using what seems, it seems to me a non-existing bloodline. And in this age of DNA research, despite the fact that Blavatsky is, what I am concerned, cleaned of an obvious racist discourse, still the post-colonial doctrine of the theosophists and an extension the anthroposophists of Steiner, they hold up the icon of a mythical racial hierarchy. It may be not a case of blatant racism, but it certainly is an elitism based on pedigree, just like the caste system is so valuable to a larger part of the Hindus. The way this twisted history of Aryans has infiltrated in people's minds to this day is shocking. Especially considering the sources of it all. You have to be blind not to see the manipulations at hand. The ruling class knows very well that erasing people's history equals erasing their collective memory. Uprooting the history of one people, any people, affects the history of humanity as a whole. Cut the roots and rule them firmly. Do not claim a history that is not yours, and don't allow it to happen. Don't allow anyone to destroy an ancient memory by rewriting history. With the emergence of the USSR as an example, we see very well what a totalitarian system does with tribal legacy, with the legends and the customs of people. What the Roman Church did during the Middle Ages in Europe with Christianizing and the horror of Inquisition is the same thing. I will not claim to have the truth, and I am not too thick to admit my wrongs, but I guess we will have to see what we will have to see about that as research moves along. This has taken longer than I thought it would already, so I will stop here. I'm obviously not done with this friction thing, and I'm working on a second part. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.
மனத்தினில் நினைத்திடு கணத்தினில் வினைத்தொடர் பறித்து பரமுக்தி அருள்